ever feel that your horse does everything right, they always respond correctly, but there's just still something missing between the two of you, like you're not really clicking yet, or you just feel like your horse maybe doesn't understand you? Well, what I've learned after going through this personally is this all comes down to trust and whether or not your horse trusts you. Building trust takes time, and if you've had a horse for years but you've never put in the effort to building trust, then that horse is going to stay the same. And this isn't to pinpoint anyone or say you're doing anything wrong, it's just something I've personally noticed. I had my horse Tucker for years. We just weren't clicking at one point, and I realized it's because I hadn't done anything to really build trust. So in this video today, I'm going to share some really simple ways you can start building trust with your horse. My first point for building trust is to establish a routine with your horse. So horses are prey animals and flight animals. That means they're always going to be looking for things that may pose a threat to them. Everything about a horse, from the way they're built to the way they communicate and the way they look at the world, it all comes down to that principle of being a prey animal. So that's the first thing you need to remember when working with your horse. If you look at that in relation to a routine, what a routine does is a routine helps your horse know what to expect. In turn, that's going to give them confidence as you work with them. So vice versa, if you have a pretty sporadic routine, that horse is not going to know what to expect. They're not going to know what's coming next. And so they're going to feel like they always have to be more on edge and more on the lookout for things that may pose a threat to them. Every horse is different. Some horses will be much more sensitive to this than others. But I have noticed, especially if you have a new horse or maybe you've gotten a horse that has come from a bad situation, establishing a very steady routine that you follow every day is really going to go a long way in helping you build trust. My second point to building trust with your horse is to manage your emotions. And I know you've probably heard this 1,000 times being in the horse world, but horses are able to pick up on your emotions very easily, and they actually tend to mirror your emotions because as prey animals, they are feeding off your energy. In the wild, for example, if one horse is anxious and they're looking over there at something that may be spooky, another horse will see that horse doing that and do the same thing. And the reason for that is they're in flight mode. They're seeing, okay, do I need to watch out for that or am I okay? Managing your emotions actually goes hand in hand with establishing a routine in the fact that it all comes back to consistency. You want to be consistent and be the same with your horse at all times. And how this fits in emotionally is you want to maintain like a steady level of emotion when working with your horse. You don't want to be like up, down, up, down, up, down, like getting frustrated and then being really excited and then getting mad and then being straight line for a minute and then, because that is making your horse not know what to expect from you. There's a part of horse training where you almost have to disconnect yourself emotionally and be an objective observer. The biggest reason for this is because your emotions actually affect your body language and how you communicate with your horse. Just one example is if you're feeling scared or nervous, you're going to tense up, and that tension is communicated directly to your horse, either through your reins or through your legs when you're sitting on them. And so that in turn will tell your horse to be tense. If you know trust is one of the things you're missing from your relationship with your horse, I just created an online course all about building trust with your horse. And I actually talk a lot about the certain things that you may be telling your horse subconsciously just based off of your emotions. And I also talk about how you can recognize those things and correct them and get yourself in a mindset where you can build trust with your horse. I also go through very helpful groundwork exercises that I actually used on my own horse Tucker when I wanted to start building trust with him. And so if you'd like to check that course out, the link is in the description. It's at shop.equinehelper.com, and it's the how to gain and maintain your horse's trust through groundwork. So I'll put the link in the description and go check that out if you want to know more. My third point is a very vital piece of continuing to grow trust with your horse, and that is to educate yourself about areas you're unsure about. So what I mean by this is if you are asking your horse to do something inconsistently to where you're not really confident in what you're asking them to do, that can make your horse just so confused. And if you're telling your horse to do one thing, but you're actually expecting another thing, that just throws them out of whack. And once again, it goes back to then they don't know what to expect. And so one thing I personally had to do with my own horse when I was going through this situation is I started taking him to a horse trainer who would work with me personally and just understanding how to ask things correctly, and also understanding what I was doing subconsciously to where I was causing him to react and I was giving him mixed signals. And so that is a very important piece of horseback riding just in general, like let alone from building trust. Like, you need to know how to ask things correctly if you want certain results. I feel like this one's kind of a given, but my fourth point for building trust with your horse is to spend time with them and not really expect much from them. I always compare this to a normal relationship you would have with another human. If you have a friend or a spouse or a significant other, you need to spend time with that person before you're really close with them and you feel comfortable around them. Same thing with your horse. Your horse needs to spend time with you before they can really feel comfortable around you. And that also goes back to the herd dynamics. Horses are used to living in a herd, and so they do cherish that relational connection. And if you can just bring that into your relationship with your horse, it's gonna go a long way. This is something I always address when people have first gotten a horse. I get a lot of people asking me and sharing problems they have with their horse, like they've just gotten their brand new horse, it's been a few weeks or a few months, but they're starting to notice certain behaviors in that horse that weren't there when they originally went to look at the horse. Well, yes, in some situations, the horse can actually be something it was presented not to be, but in most cases, what's happened is that horse has changed environments when you bought them. They came to a new stable, they have a new human working with them, they have a new herd. That is a lot of changes for a horse, and that can be very overwhelming because they don't know what to expect. So if you're seeing behaviors that you initially didn't see in your horse, it's important to remember that that is usually your horse learning to settle in and figure things out, and they're feeling stressed and they're in an environment they're not familiar with yet. So if you've just bought a horse, like always give your horse time to just settle in. And in these scenarios, like don't expect much out of them, don't ask them to do much, just let them settle in and give them a few months. My miniature horse Yoshi, that unfortunately recently passed away, we mentioned in a previous video, when he came to us, he was very uneasy around us. You could tell he wasn't really comfortable around humans. If you'd ask him to do something and he may get a little riled, you could tell he was expecting you to hit him. And so for a while, he had that behavior, but as time went on and he learned to trust us, that behavior went away to where he was super loving and affectionate and you could just scratch him. And so just remember, things take time. You're not gonna build trust with your horse overnight. You need to be very consistent over a long period of time to get where you want to go. You have to be very intentional when building trust with your horse. So once again, my new online course is out, How to Gain and Maintain Your Horse's Trust Through Groundwork. The link is in the description, so be sure to check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more weekly horse videos.